Hello, my name is Rohanna Mughal and I'm Director Arts at the British Council and Councillor for Culture and Arts at the British Embassy here in Beijing. I'm really pleased that you're joining this online discussion. This online event forms part of many events that are taking place over the course of the next couple of weeks. And those events form part of our hashtag Connected by Creativity Online UK-China Contemporary Culture Festival. The festival aims to share vibrant culture, contemporary vibrant culture from the UK and also from China. And some of the culture that we are sharing over the next few weeks was produced during lockdowns and during the pandemic. And I think it's a wonderful opportunity to observe, to engage and to enjoy arts and culture that was produced at a time of uncertainty. Often adversity breeds creativity. The festival has a number of themes, and those are sustainability, diversity and inclusion. And I think that those themes are very fitting when we think about the practice of architecture. When we think about sustainability and we think about the future of our environment and we think about the materials that are used to make the buildings that we live and work in, but also the materials and the design that's used to help navigate the spaces between the architecture. I think there's a lot to be said about sustainability now, but also in the future. Inclusion and diversity are also core and essential to enabling inclusive architecture, to enabling neighbourhoods to develop safely and to enable cohesive communities. So I think there's an awful lot to be spoken about on this panel discussion, and I really hope that you're going to enjoy it. We've got a fantastic lineup of speakers, and we're very pleased indeed to be partnering with the Royal Institute of British Architects. So I won't say much more. I'll let you sit back and enjoy the discussion, and I shall now hand over to the brilliant Azlina Bulmer, who will take you through this panel discussion. Thank you so much for joining, and I do hope that you'll have opportunity to look at our website and our social media channels and look at some of the other events that are happening as part of our hashtag Connected by Creativity Online UK-China Contemporary Culture Festival. Thank you so much and enjoy the discussion.
Hello everyone. It is my pleasure to welcome you to 2020 UK-China Online Culture Festival. The RIB is delighted to be formally supporting British Council on this panel discussion on the topic of designing for inclusivity and community. As a global professional membership body driving excellence in architecture, RIBA's key mission is to serve our members and society in order to deliver better buildings and places, stronger communities and a sustainable environment. Being inclusive, ethical, environmentally aware and collaborative underpins all that we do. We are pleased to have opened one of our first international offices in our 186-year history in Shanghai in 2019. Since then, our work in China has gone from strength to strength. In May 2020, the RIBA launched Hello China, a 12-month campaign tackling 4 key themes: sustainability, design excellence, identity and craftsmanship. Over the last 5 months, we have actively engaged in a suite of activities across China, from panel discussions, digital talks, and most recently, a photography competition known as China 88 Places and Spaces. We are humbled with the support we have received from the architecture community in China and beyond. Inclusive and community-centered approach in design is of course very important to RIBA and our members. If you want to build strong communities, you need to do more than just design a building. Too many developments focus solely on increasing profit or housing numbers at the expense of good design and creating sustainable approach and livable places. Good development requires an approach which reflects local and regional circumstances and investment plans, and it needs to involve local residents and users to be truly inclusive. Wider collaboration between relevant local organisations across the public sector, including health, education and others, is also essential to ensure adequate planning for the needs of new neighbourhoods. And it goes without saying that inclusivity should start with those who are involved in the design process. We need to encourage more female designers to be part of the journey and really embed their ideas into the design process too. We must not forget the young either. After all, they are the community of the future, although our elderly, who have often been forgotten previously, should have a say in how they want to live as well. The pandemic has done much damage to the global economy, but it's also brought many of us together. We have a chance now to learn from each other, and the time has come for change in how we design for now and the future. Without doubt, the best design ideas are those that have embedded inclusivity in their design approaches. I hope you will enjoy listening to our excellent panel of speakers who will draw on their expertise and share best practice in inclusive design and architecture from the UK and China, and I have no doubt we have much to learn from each other. Enjoy the session and stay safe.
Hi everyone, I'm Sever Davis, Director of Architecture, Design and Fashion at the British Council. As you may know, the British Council is the UK's international organisation for cultural relations and educational opportunities. The British Council aims to create friendly knowledge and understanding between the people of the UK and other countries. Our work is centred around the arts, culture, education and language. We're delighted to run this UK-China Cultural Festival, exploring a range of topics, and specifically today, the role of architecture and inclusive design in helping communities to prosper and thrive. Before I begin, I'd just like to say thank you to my colleagues at the British Council on China for putting together this fantastic program, and to the RIBA, specifically the China chapters, for their support and expertise. And finally, a big thanks to everyone watching and tuning in.
Hi, my name is David Ogunwoyiwa. I'm an architect and lecturer working in London. I am the founder of a practice called Architecture Doing Place, and we're an architecture and urban design practice, and we focus on social housing and arts projects. As our name implies, we do both architecture and what we think of as place. The intersection of these focuses is our concern for community and inclusivity. It's a pleasure to be discussing that issue with you this morning in this talk. We talk about in our practice, giving the mundane a beautiful due. This is about respecting the communities, the daily routines, and the environments hidden in plain sight, which underpin our sense of urbanity. The importance of this has become apparent when it was suddenly threatened by this year's pandemic. The sudden emptiness of the public realm, the disorientating disappearance of people who we become familiar with, though they are often very vaguely known to us.
Hello, thank you for the invitation. My name is Dionne, professor and head of Brunel Design School in London. I have been conducting research in inclusive design since 2001. I trained in industrial design and architectural design at Trinity University, and then PhD in Cambridge University. I have always been interested in making products and environments more inclusive for the most diverse of population. In the past almost 20 years, I have taught in Brunel University, Loughborough University, and Tongji University. We have engaged in students' project on inclusive design and also conducted research with research councils as well as industry to make products and virtual experience more inclusive. Brunel Design School is newly established. It is built on Brunel's well-respected industrial design, product design, and product design engineering programs with a new edition of digital media. We offer undergraduate, master's, and PhD programs in design and digital media. Made in Brunel is a student-led innovation showcase. So we exhibit students' project annually. It shows very much the Brunel's enterprising spirit. A workshop and lab-based teaching is very well respected and recognized by UK industry.
嗨，大家好，我是北京别处空间建筑设计事务所的主持建筑师冬梅。我和刘小川先生从2004年开始，也就是16年前开始我们的建筑实践。我们从那个时候 就开始设立了一个原则，以分别处理的原则，以每个项目它自身的特点来生发出它的这个每个项目的解答，以这个方式来做建筑设计。我们分别这个做了16年，做了很多从宏观到微观的各种各样的设计。但是呢，我们比较擅长的方向，一个呢是与环境共生的建筑，就是在环境中，在特定的人文环境和自然环境中的建筑设计。第二件事，我们研究这个，我们特别在乎场地内的地域的文化特性，我们也在乎在这个文化特性的基础上去生发出它的保护与发展。第三个呢，我们研究可持续这个设计，可持续的规划，以可持续的视角来做建筑设计。第四个，我们关注这个公共空间，公共空间与人和社会和大家使用者之间的联系，然后生活和空间的相互影响。
Hello, I am Enran Zhang. I'm an architect working in Chapman Taylor Shanghai studio. Outside of the practice, I am also the honorary secretary at the RIBA China chapter. As a young architect who is trained in the UK and have practiced in London and Shanghai, it is a great pleasure to be invited to the UK-China Online Culture Festival and to join this panel discussion on inclusivity and community.
Hello everyone, I'm Dionne Xinkai. I'm an urban study expert. I have more than 10 years of professional experience in the field of urbanization in both the public and private sectors. My research interests are new technology-driven urban development research, smart city policy, and top-level design. It's a great pleasure to join this panel discussion.
And to be asked that question and to answer, instead of any particular words that came to mind or descriptions, what actually came to mind were images of spaces and places, parks and playgrounds, children playing happily surrounded by parents or grandparents enjoying coffee and tea and snacks and other food, older people sitting on benches, chatting with neighbors, friends and family, people walking their dogs, people having picnics, people reading books, and people working on their laptops. So a whole host of activities taking place in this space or place that you can imagine. Essentially, when I think of architecture and design for inclusivity and community, what I think of is the community itself. This is not to say in any way that the architecture isn't important. The design is everything in this, from the scale to the materials used, to the provision for different types of activities, and really importantly, the provision for different types of people, sometimes called users, although I prefer the term citizens. That is, an inclusive building or space is one that works for everyone, regardless of age, ability, or background. All of these factors play a huge role in how inclusive a space or place is. But the real success comes when a place or space is claimed by the community and therefore becomes integral and embedded in that community.
大家好，关于包容性与社区性这个设计主题，在我来理解来讲，什么是有包容性的一个场所？我的理解是，如果这个地方不论老少，不论文化背景，不同的人在这个地方都很舒服，很轻松，有一种安全的感觉。然后这个地方呢，大家都愿意来，有聚集感，有人气。我想这就是一个好的、具有包容性的一个场所空间吧。那什么又是那个不包容的空间呢？我觉得当我们走在一个高速路的旁边的夹道上，周围的速度都离我们非常的快的掠过我们的身旁，当我们走在那个大的这个办公的 CBD， 像北京的这个商务中心这样的空间里，每一个这个楼都在，所有的人都在繁忙的 这个奔走相互交织着，但是我会觉得每一个这个楼梯、大门或街上的行人好像与我都没有关系。像这样的场所感，我不会停留。如果我停留，我好像是这个繁忙的人群中的一个无所事事的闲者。这种感受，我觉得是一个非常排斥我的一个环境。这个是我理解的什么是这个具有包容性的社区环境，什么是不具有包容性的场所的一种直观感受。
So to me, architectural design, private or public, or spaces in between, if they are designed to be accessible, usable, and desirable to the intended users so that they can participate and interact well and feel comfortable, that means inclusivity. If you cannot access equally as others or cannot participate or feel out of space, that means you are excluded.
I think one of the answers to this is about authorship. Again, in our practice, we talk about our shared built environment forming all of us inescapably. And in this way, its authorship is a form of franchise. And we talk about its authorship. By that, we mean about who's invited to make our shared built environment, who's invited to define it. I mean, because it defines us so profoundly, it defines where we're born, where we go to school, where we meet our loved ones, where we live, where we spend our free time, where we do our work. So it kind of reaches every aspect of our lives. And we think because of that, everybody should have the opportunity to define it and to form it and to work with it and to shape it. But most people have the experience of feeling excluded from this shaping of our shared built environment. So designing for inclusivity and community is also about designing for our society. It's about what society we want to see and what society we all agree equally we agree with. Now, if you ask most people, I believe most people are interested in a sense of fairness, or at least interested in something that's vaguely equitable without often knowing what that means. But I would argue that that is about inclusivity and community because none of us live in a vacuum. So in the most unequal societies, what you will have is a few people at the top with some resources, but they also need to go from place to place. They need to have traffic systems that work. They need to have hospitals that work. They need to have safety. They need to have schools and employment. And even if for instance, if you're a rich industrialist who doesn't really seem to need anybody else, you still need staff, and those staff need to be trained. So all of these things matter. You need buildings that work. You need your own home that works. You need roads and bridges that operate and transport systems that provide a kind of resilience that allow your activities to take place. So in my view, societies that exclude people so consistently and systematically and so fundamentally are actually designing their own obsolescence. It seems to willfully ignore the beneficial opportunities, ideas, and energy which could potentially illuminate common challenges from an unanticipated point of view. Exclusion also establishes grievances and impacts those in a way that turns out to be really expensive in terms of resource and energy to then unpick. It erodes trust in institutions and processes, which we ask to be taken for granted. And then that makes it difficult for us to deal with other common challenges, like, for instance, the pandemic that we're all facing. So what inequality and exclusion and a lack of community creates is actually a lose-lose instead of a win-win. And as a rationalist, for me, that seems fundamentally an irrational approach to take. And I believe that what we should be doing is being proactive in building in resilience and building in a kind of common sense of core opportunities for people so that everybody can contribute, so we can learn from everybody and get some insight from them.
First of all, I would like to share my observations on this word, inclusiveness, from the perspective of design studies. The Wharton School once interviewed Ms. Kat Holmes, Director of User Experience Design, about inclusive design. She spoke of a study on etymology. She said that the roots of the two words, inclusion and exclusion, are both closure in Latin. It means that exclusion is to shut out, while inclusiveness is to shut in. So we also shut out many other groups when we stand for a certain kind of scenario. I'm an expert in urban studies. When we talk about cities or communities, inclusiveness is a very important topic. We all know urbanization serves as a positive force in promoting sustainable and inclusive economic growth, social and cultural development, as well as environmental protection. A community is a relatively independent social community that consists of a group of people with a specific lifestyle and a sense of belonging who are living in a certain area. Therefore, topics of city and community inclusiveness usually come together with such keywords as economic growth, social equity, spatial isolation, and civil rights. Inclusiveness is not only a method of urban planning and design, but also a reflection of outlook on values. In 2016, the United Nations Conference on Housing and Urban Sustainable Development approved the new urban agenda, an extension of the UN Sustainable Development Goals and the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The core vision of the new urban agenda is cities for all. It means to allow everyone to equally use and enjoy the rights to live in the cities and human settlements. The inclusiveness we pursue is to ensure that all existing and future residents can, without any discrimination, live in and build fair, safe, healthy, convenient, affordable, resilient, and sustainable cities and human settlements, and to ultimately promote prosperity and improve the life quality for all. Without inclusiveness, such equality would not be reflected.
So for me, an architectural design for inclusivity and community means to create a place where everyone in the community will have equal access to a shared memory of this place. They share a same story within the community, which becomes part of their life experience. In a way, every individual defines the community. It is therefore very important to allow individuals to be able to connect with each other, with the place, and its wider context, such as a city. When we're designing for inclusivity and community, I think we are trying to eliminate segregation and discrimination as much as possible through spatial design. The goal is to create places that generate a sense of belonging and a sense of security, not just physically, but also emotionally, which allows individuals to feel no pressure to make connections with each other, who have different cultural, social, or religious backgrounds. And I guess to feel excluded means that you're not part of the story or memory of that community or place. You feel that you're marginalized. It's like people are living in bubbles that never cross their paths.
一个好的、一个具有包容性的社区公共空间，我认为至少有这么几点。第一点叫安全性，它是人停留在这儿是安全的啊。第二呢，它是可以方便到达的。在中国很多的城市设施和建筑设施，目前来讲对无障碍的关注还是不够的。然后这个无障碍到达才能使这个场所是宽容的啊。然后第三个事儿呢是这个场所一定要是可停留的。那么可停留的不光是有座椅，有停留空间，同时这些座椅还在适当而安全的地方啊。同时这个地方呢一定得是明亮的，不是阴暗的，不是消极的啊，情绪上。那么这样才能够就是说 同时还有一个就是这样的环境一定是生态的，它跟绿化这个在一起，这样的话相对能够跟快速交通的道路相隔开啊，这样的空间才能让人因安全而放松下来的这样的空间。同时呢，我们认为一个包容性的空间应该是个有服务的空间啊。然后不管是上厕所的，还是那个饮水的，当我们社区里全部都是私有住宅的时候，没有公共设施的时候，也没有公共场所的时候，所有的这些包容性是不可能到达的。那么还有一点就是在国内因为缺少公共的这个空间哈，这空间不仅包括环境，也包括场所啊，才能是全天候的啊。这个全天候的庇护，我认为也是非常重要的这个包容性的一部分。
Well, there are three key factors. The first one is relevant to the design process. So you have to place people at the heart of the design process, taking care of their different capabilities, different needs, and different goals, and facilitate different ways of interaction. The second is the design has to be flexible. It can be easily adapted to accommodate different activities and interactions. The third is about providing a multi-sensory cues like visual, audio, and tactile, so that users in it can understand the function easily and they can navigate through the spaces easily.
The architecture design and urban design that are compatible with the framework of inclusivity's values should be a design that can reflect the attitude of non-discrimination and take into full consideration the demands of all people, rather than being simply equivalent to accessible design. An inclusive community should enable everyone, including locals and non-locals, youngsters and elderly, healthy people and people with physical or mental disabilities, women and children, to share all kinds of service facilities of the city and community equally and with dignity, from the governance model to space design.
I think, again, that comes back to authorship. And again, that comes back to a sense of redistribution and redistributive values. I think about inclusion and community as a redistributive exercise, a redistributive kind of forum. And when I talk about that, often people think I'm talking about redistribution of money and funds. Sometimes I am. But more often, I'm talking about a reciprocal redistribution and a reciprocal exchange of power over conversations and decision-making. If we create space for people to be able to contribute to conversations and authorship about their communities and their spaces as broadly as possible, what we gain back from that is insight that we can't possibly anticipate from our own unique perspective. We do know things. As architects, we're very familiar with understanding things because we're specialists. We're trained specialists. We're trained for a very long time, and we understand things in a technical way. And we are also citizens. We're also individuals. So we have a level of insight, and we're imaginative. We can't possibly know everything. So somebody is an expert in their specific environment in knowing how to get from A to B and the route and the journey they take to work every day, because they take that journey to work every day. And it's impossible for us all to anticipate that in so much depth and understanding. So we need to understand from people. We need to understand what it means, what that lived experience is from somebody else's point of view, to contribute to that. And that actually makes our imaginations richer. That creates an opportunity for us to understand that data and to reinterpret it in an imaginative way to solve solutions.
Well, we have all learnt about Le Corbusier's modular man, and we understand its value in terms of measuring and reconciling maths, the human form, architecture, imperial and metric, and beauty in a single system. But the modular man is a normative and normalized body that only represents a small percentage of human population. A design based around this may cause problems to many. For example, a perfectly proportioned Le Corbusier's LC2 armchair may turn into a trap for an old lady with a plump body and limited mobility. This is exactly what we should avoid when creating inclusive design. The design decisions are not supposed to be based on the dominant, the majority, or even the average. It is a decision that takes everyone in the community into consideration. Therefore, engaging community members in the design process is vital when designing inclusively. Of course, community participation is not just about learning the pretty side of things, such as their visions, aspirations, and dreams. It is more about understanding the correct problems to solve, the struggle, the pain, the unfairness, and the imbalance. As Pritzker Prize winner Aliendo Aravina once put, there's nothing worse than answering the wrong question well. So yes, I think community participation, generating connections, and openness in the design are some of the most important factors for creating inclusive environments.
There are several definitions of inclusive design, but I like the definition used by the Inclusive Design Hub in Scotland, which says that inclusive design is the design of environments so that it can be accessed and used by as many people as possible, regardless of age, gender, or disability. An environment here means anything from a building, including shops or offices, hospitals, leisure centres, to open spaces, including public squares, parks, and even the streets themselves. Importantly, according to Inclusive Design Hub Scotland, inclusive design keeps the diversity and uniqueness of the individuals in mind. To this end, and to answer the question of the key factors that go into creating inclusive environments, architects and designers must involve people, the community who will use the building or space in the design process at every stage. Consultation and engagement is absolutely key. Consultation with as many people, with as many different ages, abilities, and backgrounds is so important from the earliest stages to completion. From a British Council perspective, a project that I would like to share is called Reframing Spaces, and let me say a little bit more about that. Together, British Council Venezuela and the UK-based British Council design team put out an open call for UK-based architects and designers to submit creative proposals for the improvement of the urban dynamic in Caracas, which you may know is the capital of Venezuela. The project was conceived because Caracas has suffered from a decrease in public spaces for leisure and entertainment. They've suffered security and violence problems, overpopulation, and a deficiency of public services. So while not conceived entirely as an inclusive design project, at the core of our project, Reframing Spaces, was an ambition to improve the quality of life for everyone, for all local citizens, and to regain a feeling of ownership over their city, and ultimately to promote a responsible use of public space and to make a safer city. We ran the open call for proposals, and the resulting winning proposal and installation was conceived and designed by Will Sandy. Named the Catalyst Cube, the project is a small, movable cube structure that can unfold to host events from education to performance, or indeed any other activity that the community wants to host and wants the space to be. In developing the Catalyst Cube, Will Sandy spent time talking with people all over Caracas, talking and hearing their voices, hearing their ideas for what they wanted a project like this to be. Importantly, he also spoke to children, who are often overlooked in these processes. Will Sandy has said, "The first thing I did was try to find a way to consider how people saw their day-to-day lives and how I could see it from their eyes. This is such an important part of inclusive design, talking to people and seeing things from their point of view." The Catalyst Cube spent time in different parts of the city of Caracas and has been instrumental in demonstrating how architecture, even when a temporary structure, can give people a voice in their communities. I'll say again that consultation and engagement is key. And just to say that I think that we need to include this type of thinking, this understanding of consultation and engagement in architectural education, so that the next generation of architects are well equipped to engage with communities and think about inclusivity and accessibility in this way.
The project I'm sharing today is a concept design of a community center for a less developed urban area called Alamar in Havana. I teamed up with two architects from Germany for this project. Alamar is known as a commute town with next to none public spaces. The design aims to revitalize the area through a new master plan and a community center as one of its new landmarks to make Alamar a secondary urban center of Havana. The site used to be a swimming pool in the 1980s, which was a beautiful and lively community hub where people come and socialize and have fun. Unfortunately, it was closed down after 3 months of opening due to a lack of financial support from the government to maintain it. Since then, people rarely come to this place except for occasional visits of youngsters using it as a skateboarding site. We want to bring back that sense of community by creating a very open and welcoming space where everyone can come here and use it any way they want. So we took the surface of the swimming pool and used an origami approach to create an open form with indoor and semi-outdoor spaces suitable for a myriad of activities. We connected the building with key axes of the master plan so that everyone can easily converge to this place through urban fast channels. But Alamar is so poorly connected with the city center where the real Havana life is, and residents generally feel that they are not part of the city. Currently, only 2 bus routes are going from the city center to Alamar, and it's a 3 hours commute each way. To resolve this, we proposed a ferry line that connects Alamar with important city life nodes, shortening the journey into 1 hour, which allows people to enjoy the life in the city in a much easier way. To further encourage interactions within the community, we created a community bonus system based on hypernetwork theories. Residents get community points for organizing or participating events such as a salsa party, book club sessions, bamboo crafting workshops, sports activities, and concerts. The community points can then be used for trading food in the community urban farms and food banks. So our ultimate goal is to embrace all sorts of possibilities and interactions that create a resilient and inclusive community through physical spaces and a virtual network.
An exciting project that we are working on at the moment that's about inclusivity and design is actually about inclusivity and design in an intergenerational way. And we're working on that with our colleagues and collaborators at a practice called Studio Gill here in London for a project that we've been shortlisted on jointly for intergenerational housing in Enfield in London, where we're working with the idea of a triple bottom line. And that triple bottom line is to be socially sustainable, to be environmentally sustainable, and to be economically sustainable. And in terms of socially sustainable, we're looking at issues of cohabiting older generations with younger generations, which is actually a very traditional idea in many societies. And now I would say the last 100 or a couple of 100 years, we've begun to live in perhaps units of accommodation that are more individualistic, and that isn't necessarily solving all of our needs once again at the early part of the 21st century. So in order to have our accommodation design of the places we live catch up with the ways that we actually live now, with the new technologies that we have, with the new opportunities, but also the new challenges that we have. Because of advances in medicine and technology, people are living longer. People with disabilities are able to be kept alive and to exist longer. People with health difficulties are able to live for longer. But also in many societies, in working age families, are actually both members of those families are working and going out to work. So there are issues about who looks after the kids and childcare and how that can be accommodated. Often that's supported by extended members of the family. But there's also issues about adult social care for older members of the family who are possibly retiring, spending more time at home. There's issues with improved automation so that perhaps people are actually spending less time in the workplace. because of the pandemic, people are, as I'm talking to you now over a video link, people are working more from home. So there's issues about creating space for homeschooling and home working in the home. And how do we accommodate all of that for all of the generations? So socially, we're exploring ideas such as this. Environmentally, we're dealing with issues of the climate emergency, about low embodied energy, about carbon reductions, about how we're dealing with issues about overheating. It was a very hot summer here in London over the last summer, about insulation and to preserve against heat loss, about carbon neutrality, about reducing waste, about circular economy so that we're not overusing the Earth's resources. And economically, we're trying to look at new models to pay for this, or to reconfigure existing models to respond to these challenges in a more nimble and agile way. So how can we use the funding that's available, that is always limited, to respond to these challenges in a more day-to-day way? But also, in a personal way, how do we unleash the creative capacity of individuals who enjoy the opportunity to create their own entrepreneurial, what's called side hustles, that may not be economical on a large scale. So if you want to write a novel or teach yoga or make pottery, that is only marginally economical often, besides your day job, that will actually bring in enough income to subsist. But it is something that gives you a sense of well-being. It is something that gives you a sense of autonomy and a sense of power over your own life and destiny. And it gives you a sense of dignity also. So creating opportunities for those, spatial opportunities for those within the household, is actually a really interesting way to extend the richness of your private realm, your semi-private realm in a communal way, and also the public realm and how you can contribute to that.
而我最近呢，正好做了一个设计，设计到了一个这个中国的一个90年代的一个社区的中心空间、中心花园空间的一个设计，叫牡丹园。那么中国的一个这30年的城市化发展，它的核心是一个确定私有空间的这个住区，那么对公共空间的预留和关注是特别少的，往往这种高密度的人流集中的这种大的社区，相互之间人与人之间都是相互不认识的。然后更是缺少邻里之间交流的场所，或者是社区同好，共同爱好的人的一个交流的场所，更缺这样的空间啊。那么我们这回正好在做社区的公共空间的时候，就发现在这样的空间里，现在决定空间走向的话语权却是由不同的阶层有很大的差异啊。那么现在我们做的这个社区呢，它是在一个巨大的一个几栋高层之间，是一个巨大的社区的中心，是在几栋高层之间的。那么这块用地呢，因为90年代中国的大多数家庭是没有汽车的，所以对预留的停车是严重缺乏。那么现在这个社区停车就成了一个巨大的问题。现在这个汽车的拥有者往往是年轻的人，或者是在壮年的这些人啊。那么他们因为没有停车，他们的车就强势的停在了整个社区的空间，那么就严重挤压了社区的这个绿化空间和这个老人孩子的停留空间。那么可是在我们做设计的时候，我们第一件事儿就是希望能够通过一些这个见缝插针的一种特殊的机械式的地下停车方式，把这个尖锐的停车问题缓解掉。那么缓解掉以后，腾出空间来给老人和孩子和绿化来，让这个空间就是公共空间更安全，能够停下来，能够兼容不同的需求啊。但事实上不是这样，最主要的是第一个，在我们希望把车这个用一个特殊的 车库方式来解决掉，而还这个空间与公共的绿化和公共的停留的时候，这些车主就是拥有汽车的壮年人就会提出来，严正抗议。他们的理由是，如果要做特殊的这个机械车库，地下室的机械车库，将会成本更高，这些成本和停车的方式也不够方便啊，然后而且呢增加了他们的停车成本，于是他们就说，那我们在这个地方就是要停车，强势的说。而第二拨人就是这些老人，这些车主就会说，在不远的社区不远的地方就有公共公园，你们这些老人为什么不能去公共公园去这个休闲啊？而那些老人很多70、80岁的老人说，他们根本都走不到，不能走很远的路，过马路去到达那个公共空间。这是一个非常严重的问题，而且还有一个就是有那些年轻的家长，他们抱着那个小孩，就是婴幼儿，要在楼下去晒太阳。他们呢，这个小孩非常小，他们也需要一些停留的绿化空间。这个时候我们在调查他们的意见的时候，他们说我们真的就是需要绿化。就是我们问他们就讲，我们第一需求的就是绿化，我们需要花园，我们需要座椅，我们需要能停下来的地方，这才是核心的一个需求。而这些声音，当他们来触碰到这个车主的这个停车需求的这些人的声音的时候，就变成了弱势，就说那我们没有钱去做更复合的停车系统的话，那我们的这个需求就不能被满足，那是我们就得退，就是老人和孩子都在往后退啊，是这么一个情况。我们还遇到了一个情况，就是我们在这个社区里，因为建设的年代和标准稍有不同，一个社区就会被围墙割裂了好几块啊，然后在这个好几块的割裂当中，相互是不通的，是完全隔阂的。结果发现这个社区空间，它的服务系统是一个大社区周边的商业服务系统。那么从一个组团就是被割裂了的一个区域到达公共区域，或者是到达其他的一个边界的时候，这个通道人行通道都是不通的。这个人行通道都不通，那么这样的话，很多老年人他们在买菜呀，在这些问题上头啊，都带来了很多的不便啊。我们就想办法让他们在这个围墙上架上这个人行的通道的桥，同时还用电梯给他们提上去，然后这个楼宇的电梯与这个2层的这个桥相通，让他们有更便捷的打通便捷的人行通道。这个举动，结果发现我们在这个长期在缺少公共包容性的空间和讨论的这个基础上，这样的这个主意也遇到了非常大的困难。他们说，我们这个有屏障的这个社区分隔的墙是我们安全感的保证而拒绝连通这些社区，然后让他们的服务更高效。
Well, I actually can share 2 examples. Both are recent. One was conducted in China, and the other is ongoing in the UK and Turkey. So the first example is our project with community centers in Yangpu District, Shanghai. There are 60 community centers. They are organized by third parties in connection with the residents and the local governments. and it's a new form of social organization. What we did is design students from Chongqing University, when I was teaching there, we worked with these community centers on different aspects of inclusion. So students worked with 16 community centers, and they provided product, interior architecture, and service design solutions to make that community centers more inclusive and more engaging for the residents. A little example is this community empowerment cards, which are based on those projects. For each project, we have some photos and then design solutions, as well as the method we employed. And these cards are shared among the community centers so they can learn from each other. And also there are empty cards which are for community centers to contribute to their new solutions. So I think that is a very interesting project. And one of the projects has been exhibited in the Milano Triennial exhibition in 2019. Okay, that is the first example. The second example is ongoing, and actually we are hosting a symposium in a few days. So this is a project sponsored by British Council's Newton Fund to establish relationships between UK universities and Turkish universities on inclusive design. In this project, the Mimar Sinan Fars University in Turkey has worked with Loughborough University in the UK, and the students from industrial design, interior architecture, architectural design, urban planning, they worked in mixed groups with two disability organizations. One is mobility disability, the other is visual impairments. So they worked with representatives from these organizations and their users to come out of ideas to improve private spaces like kitchens and public spaces like shopping malls, playgrounds and museums and transportation systems. Many of these solutions more accessible designs, and some are more inclusive, but accessible design and inclusive design are both regarded to be, solutions for inclusion.
I would like to share with you a pilot project of international sustainable development communities launched by the Inhabit, which I served as a project director. It's a reflection of our efforts to put in place people-centered, inclusive and sustainable development at the city and community level. This project, which is located in Shangjing Subdistrict, Chaoyang District, Beijing, is the Inhabit's first pilot project for sustainable development at the community level in China. Since 2019, I have led a technical team comprising CCUD and an urban tech company, Urban XYZ, to assess the sustainable development of Shangjing Subdistrict. Subdistricts are units of grassroots urban governance in China. In fact, Shangjing Subdistrict is a comprehensive area of 5 square kilometers with 106,000 residents and 12 administrative communities. We have designed a quantitative assessment system of 104 indicator factors by benchmarking against the United Nations SDG 11. That is, to cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. What makes this assessment incredibly distinctive is that all our estimates are based on big data and machine learning techniques instead of the traditional approach of urban policy analysis. The assessment indicator system takes the value of inclusiveness as a basis for scoring. For example, if we want to assess whether a community is inclusive enough, we usually examine whether its residents are diverse and whether it's attractive enough to all kinds of people. We therefore build up a profile of residents in this area and analyze the percentage of Beijing locals, non-locals, Chinese, and foreigners, thereby analyzing mobile phone signaling data. Additionally, we also employ big data to analyze the daytime population density of the area, their workplaces, where they spend their money, and whether their behavior patterns mirror the attractiveness of this area. As another example, we maintain that an inclusive community should offer all residents easy and quick access to wide variety of educational, care, and amenities of life. This assessment of convenience for residents is often embodied in the time it takes for them to various facilities from where they live. We refer to the geographical information of these amenities as point of interest, POI. For this reason, we use color technology to obtain the POIs of schools, kindergartens, hospitals, clinics, barbers, markets, and so on in Shuangding subdistrict. We simulate the routes at which residents can reach by walking 5, 10, or 15 minutes from their homes according to route planning algorithm of the map software, and we can analyze the number of POIs. The simulation is an analysis method based on real routes by which residents can reach the POIs, so we can see whether the residents' lives are really convenient. More importantly, our understanding of inclusiveness enables us to focus on whether the needs of the elderly, children, women, and people with physical or mental disabilities in Shuangding subdistrict are being well satisfied. As a result, we will also pay particular attention to the accessibility of the facilities, such as services for the elderly, mothers and children, agencies for the disabled, and psychological clinics. In other distance, we want people in this inclusive community to feel safe enough, particularly for the elderly, women, and children. So how should we assess this? Many of you may remember Gotham City, a fictional city with a terribly high crime rate as depicted in DC Comics. This city features extremely shabby streets, such as streets filled with piles of debris that create hidden corners, or those lined with broken doors and windows. These are traits that, from the perspective of environmental behavior, are very likely to cause crime and nastiness. In the assessment on Shuangding subdistrict, we leverage a sea of street view photos to perceive and analyze the street space in this area. In addition, we can use technologies like SIGNET to identify the spatial elements of the street view. So SIGNET is a deep learning-based neural network for counting images developed by a team from the University of Cambridge. With it, we can build models and train images. We therefore can identify spatial elements including trees, sky, cars, pedestrians, and debris in countless images of Shuangding subdistrict. Through the analysis of the propagation of these elements, we can figure out the green looking rate, visual openness, and safety of the street. Meanwhile, we also want to know the public engagement of residents in the community. say the hot topics they are interested in, their attitudes towards social events, their community culture, and recreational activities, among others. Accordingly, we can carry out text mining and analysis of keywords on social networks such as WeChat, Weibo, and websites of cultural activities in the city like Douban through natural language processing, NLP. As an illustration, according to our analysis on cultural activities of residents in Shangjing subdistrict, the most popular keywords including love, experience, art, English, ukulele, and drums, and their favorite activities are various classes, parties, exhibitions, salons, music, theater, and so on. Art plays a very important role in the lives of people in this area, and all kinds of people can always find a lifestyle they enjoy. Certainly, we also have a series of assessments on community resilience, housing affordability, transportation, diversity, and accessibility, and so on. It is noteworthy that we obtain the performance of all 153 subdistricts across Beijing by means of big data and machine learning, and by using unified quantitative assessment methods. As a consequence, our final assessments concerns not only the score of Shangjing in each aspect of assessment, but also its ranking in each aspect among 153 subdistricts in Beijing. Between 2019 and 2020, Shangjing subdistrict has devised more than 30 action plans based on the results of our assessment to beef up the building of pilot. For instance, in June 2020, the subdistrict held a design festival of community renewal and invited teachers and students from many universities, including Tsinghua University, Beijing Forestry University, and the Central Academy of Fine Arts. The work included renovation of doors, community gardens, and open spaces. After the design proposals were formulated, community residents, local government officers, and urban planning experts compared and selected the appropriate proposals, reached a consensus after multiple consultations, and selected the design schemes for actual constructions. As an example, this macro space called Well Point 1, we can see here, was renovated into child-friendly ground, which attracted tens of community residents each day. Besides, this space called Well Point 2, a former dilapidated and abandoned house, has been renovated into a base for intelligent recycling of renewable resources and for public education on environmental protection.
We also think that we need to create a more diverse set of actors in those people who design for inclusivity and community. In the UK, the architecture profession is very undiverse. It's one of the most undiverse professions. So doctors are very diverse comparative to architects, lawyers are diverse comparative to architects, engineers are diverse comparative to architects. Architecture is actually, particularly from the public purse, that designs for all of us, is often designed by a very narrow set of people in the same way as it was 100 years ago at the end of the First World War. But the people who pay for it through their taxes are wildly and conspicuously different in cities like London. So they're considerably diverse. So there's actually a kind of regressive redistribution of wealth in that the people who pay for this design are not invited to design it, but the people that are designing it are typically not the people who need to participate in that economic opportunity the most. And that actually, what that does is it leaves behind the economic and productive capacity of a large swathe of the population. And we think that opportunity unleashes more creativity and more opportunity for all of society. That is another aspect of community and how it makes communities resilient economically to be able to create their own opportunities and authorship going forward. We think a narrow set of designers creates a narrow set of answers to questions that are frankly universal and that affect all of us.
Well, this is an interesting question. I think design education could contribute. For example, accessibility and inclusive design should be embedded in the program rather than elective or just an optional choice. Students should really treat this seriously right from the beginning of their design career. The second aspect, maybe we need to rethink about the client-designer relationship. It's not about commissioning a project and finish the project. It is more of a conversation. One of my PhD students, he recently finished a very nice project called Designing as Caring. In that project, she developed a tool for interior designers so that they can discuss their clients' needs in a conversational gaming process. Through this process, the users' needs and their relationships with other family members, with their environments are better articulated so that designers can take care of these complex relationships and educate the clients to be more inclusive and sustainable through their designs, artifacts, and environments. The third part is relevant to how architecture is evaluated or recognized by the elite and also the public. Generally, when we see architectural awards, we often see iconic buildings. Many of them don't have any real users in it. In the future, and actually it's already starting, more and more attention have been paid to architecture such as healthcare, hospitals, caring homes, which are more relevant to everyone's daily life experience. We do hope these kind of more inclusive solutions could be the norm in the future.
在国内呢，其实社区之间比较少的有这种文化的或者种族的这个冲突，大多数都是这个中国人他只有地方上头的习惯的不一样，或者是有最重要的是年龄带来的这个不同。老年人喜欢小朋友，老年和幼小是本来是一对天生的连接，但是在小朋友半大时候乱跑，又是这个老年人最紧张的情况哈。然后目前的这个中国的设计，现在关注自己曾弱小，关注我们也都会老去，然后我们也会行动不便，这一点是不够的。我们在做设计的时候，我跟我这边合作的年轻人在讨论这个不同的社区方向的时候，我们就讨论过，在这些高层的下面这样的公共社区，我们可不可以做得更激越更活跃？那么怎么才更活跃？比如说更多的球场那个广场有很多的人在跳舞，放着那个喇叭，是这个样子然后呢，更多的孩子玩的游戏的时尚的设施，什么踩了会响的什么装置这些东西是不是会带来更时尚的这个感觉我们的年轻人认为，如果我的楼下是一个时尚地，在我们在他们来看是非常开心的他住在一个时尚的一个中心的上面，他会非常开心。但是我当时就问他们说，那如果你是个老年人，你不是个年轻人呢？你会什么感觉？他说，那要是我爷爷奶奶，我一定会怕吵 然后所以这个呢就关系到我们的另外一个问题，现在我们涉及的从业人员不可能是个多元的直接是老年人或者是小朋友，或者是多元的少数族裔或是什么，而更多的是主流的年轻的壮年的这个设计师啊。那么我们只有靠观察和靠对自己亲人的这个体验来建立这个宽容性的认识，然后来建立设计中要关注到的一个公共场所到底参与人群有哪些，而怎么能更宽容地接纳，让每一个人群都能方便，都能舒适，都能放松下来，而且相互交流和相互守望。
I think that a multi-perspective approach is needed to improve diversity in the industry. Firstly, we need to make sure that everyone in the profession understands the value of diversity. Evidence has shown that ethnically diverse practices are 35% more likely to outperform their competitors. These practices also double their potential for creativity and innovation by giving diverse voices equal airtime. And then, if we want this situation to continuously improve in the future, we'd better start with the ones who are going to become the future. One way, perhaps, is to inspire children from various backgrounds to consider architecture as a career option. I remember back in my master's study in the UK, we went to primary schools where the majority of students are from non-white ethnic groups, and we introduced architecture to them. To interact more with the students, we sketched out 20 prominent buildings in the city and made them into coloring books for the students. We asked them to express their impressions and feelings about these buildings through colors. They immediately become more curious about and more conscious of the built environments around them. I think this can be a promising start of a more diverse future of the profession. Also, women are especially important to diversity in architectural practices, since studies show they improve the entire social, economic, and environmental value of a practice. As a female member of the RIBA China Chapter's Committee, I am taking on Women in Architecture initiatives to organize a series of events which help celebrate the female design power and the success of female architects in China, the UK, and beyond. The events not only targets industry professionals, but engage with the wider community of academia and general public through outreach events to support those who wants to become architects, as well as to change the public perception of architects. At the chapter, we hope that Women in Architecture event series will contribute to the equal representation of women in the industry and addressing gender imbalance in architecture education.
I believe the best way to create a more inclusive practice is to keep opening our mind and learning from the wider world beyond architecture. For example, I studied in architecture school as an undergraduate and then entered business school. As a designer, I took an intense interest in the art and aesthetics of space in college. When I graduated from college and joined ACOM, the world's #1 firm engineering consulting, my team members consisted of not only architects and urban designers, but also economists, transportation specialists, water and environmental specialists, ecologists, and so on. They brainstormed and exchanged knowledge in projects of all types and sizes. Such teamwork enabled me to grow fast and to better understand a wide range of issues concerning inclusiveness that should be considered in architecture and cities, such as environmental protection and community equity. My subsequent transfer from the private sector to the public sector offered me a new perspective to think about inclusiveness. During the 6-year practice in a central government background think tank, I got involved in many research and practice projects, including China's urbanization policymaking top design, urban strategy planning and construction, urban and infrastructure investment and financing, sustainable planning, and smart city construction. As a matter of fact, this experience gave me an opportunity to appreciate inclusiveness from the perspective of a complex system and to better comprehend how to secure and achieve that inclusiveness from implementation. I therefore believe that a more inclusive practice results from a more inclusive perspective and experience. We need to keep an open mind and keep on respecting others' thinking and connecting and exchanging with other industries.
Before answering this question, I think we need to take a deeper look at how the pandemic actually influenced our life. During the outbreak, we did practice self-quarantining and social distancing measures, which led to all office workers switching to working from home. However, as the situation improves, we are gradually coming back to the way we used to live and work. So, I don't think that there's going to be a major change in the way we design spaces for office communities, especially the ones that go against face-to-face encounters, because that's human nature. What would be interesting to think about is when it is not so necessary to always come to the office to work, thanks to technological advancements, is there an alternative of work environment? Would it be more efficient and more sustainable to design high-quality home offices and community-based office environments that allow employees to work closer to their home, which in turn reduces the carbon footprint of commute? Also, by allowing working closer to home, it might be easier for female professionals to get a work-life balance, which then allows them to stay in the profession and progress better in their career. So I think these are some of the interesting directions to explore. Thank you.
We have been working in our home office in the past few months. Obviously, we recognize that our home are not designed for working for long hours. The chairs are not comfortable, they are noisy, and sometimes we don't have the optimal environment, like lack of windows, good views, and we are afraid of going into enclosed spaces with very limited personal space. This low touch started to make us appreciate those automated doors, water taps, and many virtual conferences have created convenience but also barriers for certain groups of people, so people can be excluded by technology. So COVID-19 has really created an extreme situation for us to rethink about our spaces, activities, relations, and interactions. In inclusive design, a typical method is to invite critical users to inspire innovation and challenge design norms. I think COVID-19 is like such an extreme situation. It actually challenges architects and designers to rethink the future relations interactions. And this is quite positive. We need to think about our new norm and future spaces. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed the talk.
疫情呢，实际上在中国、在世界都是把人们，我认为都是把人和人的距离拉开了的。但是真的 越是拉开了这个距离，其实人的群体性属性越会回归回来，更多的人才意识到缺失了交流的不完整啊。那么这种交流的力量是挡不住的，这种交流的力量不仅包括人要跑出来，不能都在室内去靠电脑交流，要跑出来活动，要运动，要相互的要聚集的这个力量哈，这个力量是不可阻挡的。但是所有这些力量真正的意义在于人的交往中才能相互理解，才能更能体会不同的角度与不同的人的需求，然后这种需求是包容性的关键啊，然后也是设计出包容性的关键啊。我大概对这个关于空间的社区的包容性和社区性的体会就是这些，谢谢大家。
I think the pandemic has influenced architecture and design, community and inclusion in many ways, but I think one of the ways it's mainly done that, and the most conspicuous way it's done that, as far as I can tell, is that it's actually illuminated these underlying inequalities that were always there and that were always, frankly, hidden in plain sight. And I think what it's allowed us to see in a really vivid way is the systems and the processes that exclude, that create inequalities, and that actually undermine situations for all of us. So, as I've said, the public realm is shared between all of us. If we don't have people that are resilient enough to provide us with frontline services, like manning our supermarkets, like driving our buses, then the city can't work. And in the face and in the teeth of a pandemic, then the society can't work. So it makes all of us less resilient because those communities are less resilient. And it's really expensive to deal with if we create these problems in the first place. So I think it's the rational thing to think about ways in which we can include better to avoid creating these inequalities so that society can work in a smoother and more rational way. Thank you.
The outbreak of COVID-19 is actually an important reminder for us that enhancing the resilience and inclusiveness of communities and cities is of paramount importance. When we touch upon the resilience of cities, we are referring to their ability to withstand chronic stress and acute impacts. COVID-19 has hit cities and communities worldwide very acutely, testing our performance in public health-related resource mobilization, governance capacity, and community mobilization capacity under enormous pressure. Meanwhile, following the epidemic, economic recovery and inclusive growth will be another essential issue that all cities will inevitably have to address. Therefore, COVID-19 promotes us to attach great importance to building the resilience of cities and communities. In the meantime, we place more emphasis on the synergy between resilience and inclusiveness because infectious disease cause greater harm to people with chronic disease, the elderly, and children. We may need to invest more efforts to enhance resilience and inclusiveness in the future. First of all, we need to enhance spatial resilience in urban planning, formulate appropriate spatial plans for healthcare public facilities, take into consideration the reservation of centralized treatment sites for major health and safety emergencies, and develop proper contingency plans for large public places such as sports, culture, and exhibition venues. Second, we need to enhance information resilience and template to enhance the city's ability to respond quickly to public safety emergencies without violating data privacy, by means such as big data, Internet of Things, and cloud computing. Third, we need to enhance governance resilience, set up the grassroots governance capacity with community as a basic unit, improve the supply and service capacity of grassroots, and strengthen the facilities and the community, provide diagnosis in the neighborhood and basic living security, and promote better community mobilization and shared governance.
The global COVID-19 pandemic has fundamentally changed the life for so many of us. It's changed the life of all of us around the world. For many of us, we've stayed inside for many months, and this effect on architecture's near future. This could be a whole talk in itself, and there are many people who are more expert than me in talking about this. But I will just say that I know that it has changed the way that we think of domestic spaces, as we spend a lot more time in our homes, but also a lot more thought has gone into these neighborhood spaces that we're spending a lot more time in. A lot of us aren't commuting. We are not going to the same public spaces that we did before. We're reclaiming neighborhood spaces. And so I think it's important that we think about those and how inclusive design can affect those. To end, I'd just like to quote London-based architect Dionne, who in a recent talk said, "The city and its architecture can't be truly inclusive of all people until everyone has a voice and everyone is represented in the fabric of the city." Thank you very much for having me.